Hi, my name is Elliott, and welcome to the Chronically Online Gay, deep diving on Heather Gay's life. I've done a few of these deep dives on other influencers like Emma Chamberlain, Tana, Chris Olsen, that I'll link down below, but I felt like now it was time to do it on a Real Housewife. And I'll preface this by saying Heather Gay is not one of my all-time favorite housewives. She's not my favorite housewife on Salt Lake City, but I feel like her story is one of the most interesting because how does someone go from being like a very devout Mormon wife at the beginning of the decade to getting like blackout drunk on camera and hooking up with dudes at the end of the decade? So I rewatched all the episodes, read Bad Mormon. Okay, listen to the audiobook of Bad Mormon. And did some internet sleuthing, and here are my findings. So, Heather Gay was born Heather Deans on June 29th, 1974 in Carmel by the Sea, California. And then it's funny because like literally in season 5, Heather's like, none of these bitches even know my real age. Like they know I was born on June 29th, but they don't know the year. And it's like the most like easily Googleable thing on the face of the planet. It's like the first thing that you see on Wikipedia, so I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. She was born in Carmel because her dad was studying at the Language Defense Institute because he was a part of the FBI. Not a joke. Little known fact, the FBI and CIA actively recruit Mormons due to the majority of them knowing a second language from their mission, their low-risk lifestyle, and their tendency to be rule followers. So her family moved to Colorado when she was a toddler, and she lived up there up until the age of 14, where she moved to Mormon Mecca, Salt Lake City. Moving from Colorado to Salt Lake City was a big culture shock because although she was Mormon and did have a lot of Mormon friends in Colorado, they weren't the majority, as opposed to moving to Salt Lake City where everyone was Mormon. She witnessed all different types of Mormons. More specifically, Mormons that were living double lives. And Mormons that were drinking in 9th grade, and also Mormons that were soaking. She confirmed in a season 5 episode that soaking is real.
You know what soaking is, Brooks?
Yeah, I've heard that's a myth, though.
It's not a myth.
Oh, really?
Soaking's just soaking, like a dog in a
Not
bun.
moving.
When you add a third party to jump, to create motion, that is called jump pumping. And that is something that I've never really heard or seen or participated in. But I've hot dogged and I've
In her book, she opens up about how she was wary of Mormonism since her childhood and teenage years. In one chapter, she details an experience during a confession where she felt forced to say that she was touching herself after the priest said, "I'm being compelled by the Lord to ask if you're touching yourself," when she was literally 13 and didn't even know what that meant. And she talks a lot about like learning how to like act during a confession and kind of being very fake, where learning how to play and act like you're confessing just a little bit so the priest feels good that he got something out of you, but not confessing too much, but it's just was always lies for her. And she also explained how usually the priest was one of her dad's best friends, so anything that she confessed to the priest, she knew the priest was going to go and tell her dad anyways, so it just was not a safe space for her. When she was 18, she ended up getting a full ride to the University of Utah on a piano scholarship. She's actually like a very talented pianist, a little known fact, but her parents convinced her to go to BYU by telling her, we'll pay you the equivalent of the scholarship that you got at University of Utah for you to attend BYU. So because she was a good little Mormon girl, she listened to her parents and went to BYU. And she
hated it after the first year, and I was like, I made a big fucking mistake.
Yeah, so basically the second she got there, she was treated as too big, too loud, and too much. And she couldn't live a double life like she did a little bit as a teenager because everyone at BYU was a cop. Even worse than when you go to a state school and you have a lot of your friends from high school that come with you to the state school, so your reputation from high school bleeds into college. So instead of just that, imagine it's like 60% of your friends from high school, but those friends that were all goody two-shoes, coming in with thousands of other goody two-shoes Mormons from across the country who were all like tattletales and wanting to tattle on anyone for violating the honor code, which is like being in the opposite sex's room after like 10 p.m. She says the highlight of her college experience was when she won an honorable mention for an entrepreneurship award for starting an earrings line. So she graduated BYU with a degree in humanities because conceptually she wanted to be a lawyer. But after graduating without an MRS degree, she was like,
So?
No, I'm saying
What now?
During the summer after post-graduation, she was hanging out with her friend and her friend's mom, and her friend's mom said she would help pay for Heather to go on a Mormon mission. If you don't know what a Mormon mission is, it's a voluntary full-time service period for 18 to 24 months where Mormons basically go to a different part of the country or world to like spread the gospel and try and convert people to Mormonism. So she was already wishy-washy about doing a mission, but then once her friend's mom paid for it, she was like, okay. She really, really hoped that she was going to get in international destinations. And then when she got her letter, she opened it up and then it said Montpellier, France, and she was fucking elated because she was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I'm going to a completely different culture, completely different continent. I'm going to learn a new language. This is going to be exactly like the college study abroad experience I never had. And then it wasn't. While she was in France for those 18 months, she was a very successful missionary, and she completed 16 baptisms in a year and a half when the average amount is 3. So she fucking killed it. But she definitely was questioning the gospel again the entire time she was on her mission for a myriad of reasons. She had this French teacher who she absolutely loved, and then one day he was fired and just a female French teacher came in and they never explained why he was fired or what happened. It just literally just one day it was like, here's a new French teacher, and she was like, what is going on? Years later, she found out they fired the French teacher because they found out he was gay. And also the entire time, all the French people around when she was walking around were rude as fuck to her because Mormons have to wear a specific missionary outfit. So all the French people who are already like xenophobic as fuck were like, you're not wanted here, get the fuck out. So yeah, after 18 months in France, which was a mixed bag, she gets back home and again is like,
So?
No, I'm saying
What now?
What she wanted to do was either go to law school or move to DC and become like a lobbyist, work on the Hill, that whole kind of vibe. But her father was like, no, people in DC are not focused on getting married. You should move to Huntington Beach where people are focused on finding their spouses. And again, because she was a good Mormon girl, she listened to her father and did that. So she moved to Huntington Beach, was there for a few months, and then she actually met her husband on his first day in Huntington Beach. And his name was Frank Gay III, a member of the Gay family, Mormon royalty. Fuck. I know there's a joke between like Mormons being homophobic and like Mormon royalty being the gay family, but I can't think of one. So if you guys think of one, comment it down below and I'll give you $5. Anyways, the Gay family was Mormon royalty because they were connected to the business magnate Howard Hughes. Howard left a lot of his estate to the Gay family, so they were very, very wealthy based off that. Frank himself had recently walked away from a 6-figure corporate job because he wanted to pursue his passion of being a filmmaker. And he already had created a successful film where he had made a lot of money off of it. So he was going to travel the world for the next year and just go surfing in different places around the world. And he was starting in Huntington Beach. But then found his soulmate pretty quickly, so he ended up staying in Huntington Beach for a while. When Heather met Frank, she could immediately tell he was not like the other guys. At that point, she was in her mid-20s, and all the other Mormon men she was hanging out with were like kind of sputtering to get their career started. Frank had already had a successful career, left that to pursue a passion that he immediately became successful in, just doing like a passion project of his. So he was definitely husband material, right?
Wrong.
So she describes those next 3.5 months as a very, very magical time, and it's very much a whirlwind romance. And then after 3.5 months, they got engaged for a myriad of different reasons. One, they're Mormon and they wanted to have sex and they're not gonna have sex out of wedlock. 2, Heather was like, well, he checks all the boxes, like I was mentioning earlier, that he was not like the other guys. 3, he was a key to Mormon heaven because women and children cannot get into Mormon heaven without their husband/father. And 4, it's like, boo-boo, you're 26 and Mormon and not married? What the fuck is wrong with you? That's ancient. Like, let's lock that shit down now. So in July of 2000, they got married in a very intimate ceremony in Hawaii, and Heather felt like her life was finally beginning because she had a husband. And then on their wedding night, they have sex for the first time, and it's absolutely amazing. And then the next day she wakes up, she's so happy, she's elated, she's like, oh my god, I'm married to like the love of my life, this is amazing. Immediately, reality slaps her in the face. They go to the movies, they watch Scream 3, and then in one of the scenes of Scream 3, there's a dildo. Frank is extremely offended, storms out of the movie theater, marches back to the concession stand, screams at the guy, and demands a refund. And Heather's just standing there being like,
I've made a huge mistake.
She also realized throughout the course of the honeymoon that they were just hot for each other and they aren't actually compatible at all. And she basically says, all we needed was like a weekend in Atlantic City to hook up once and then go back to our lives. But because they had to wait till they were married to have sex, and now they're locked in wedlock, she's kind of just fucked. And Heather's story is why I'm a big proponent of sex before marriage. Also, side note, to someone who's never been married, I wonder what percentage of recently married couples kind of immediately realize that it isn't going to work, but they just stay in it because they're like, ugh, this is my life now. Heather asked her mom a few weeks into her marriage, like, what do I do? We're so incompatible. I'm so miserable. And her mom basically was like, well, there's no turning back now. And she was like, I could get divorced. And her mother looked at her like she just said the N-word. She was like, divorce is not an option, so nut up and shut up. And Heather was like, oh fuck. So after 11 years of a broken marriage, in 2011, he serves her divorce papers and their divorce is finalized in 2014. Heather says she would have stayed in that marriage forever because that's just what you do in the Mormon faith, which completely makes sense. In 2012, Heather got stress-induced Bell's palsy due to the stress of getting divorced in the Mormon church, having 3 children under the age of 8, and she also got a DUI in that time. Oh yeah, I forgot to add, she had started drinking a little bit in that moment, I'm sure due to the stress of everything I just mentioned. But yeah, she had Bell's palsy that lasted 8 weeks, or basically half of her face was frozen. When it first started, she thought she was literally having a stroke and dying, and she viewed it as God serving her a muzzle and essentially punishing her for like getting divorced in the first place. The legal agreement in the divorce seems to have worked out pretty well for both of them. She writes in her book, our co-parenting is I do the work and he pays the bills. We get along fine. She has 100% custody of the 3 kids, and he bankrolls her life. He would give her money every month to pay for the mortgage and a little extra money just so she could, like, of course, buy groceries and live her life. But she says the amount was never enough for her to really do anything on her own in her personal life. So she still felt controlled by him even after the divorce. And she left the church officially in 2015, but to this day is still very heavily ingrained in Mormon culture, of course. And why I say officially is because she didn't remove herself from the Mormons records book that, like, Whitney did in one of the earlier seasons of Salt Lake City for her children. She says Frank was supportive of her leaving the church even though she feels like he was silently judging her from afar. And also, Heather can still get into Mormon heaven because she's still in the book and Whitney can't. But also in the eyes of the Mormon church, Heather is still married to Frank because divorce isn't an option in the Mormon church. So the only way Heather could get into Mormon heaven is Frank bringing her after she dies. And not just that, even though she's been taken out of the church, of course, Heather is still Mormon-ish because it's her life, it's her culture, it's everything she's ever known. So flash forward a few years to the summer of 2019, she gets a call from Lisa Barlow asking her to audition for, they didn't even know it was Real Houses of Salt Lake City at that point, just audition for a reality show that was going to take take place in Salt Lake City. Heather had always been a big fan of reality TV. She had watched a lot of the franchises, so she was really excited to apply for it, but she was like, I'm never going to get on, so she kind of applied for it like as a joke. I will say Heather is kind of the best representation as to why Salt Lake City is such a great show and why so many people resonate with it. The two broad themes of Salt Lake City are Mormonism and religious trauma. Like, religious trauma is Heather, Mary, Bronwyn, and Whitney's not even storylines, just like life stories, and just about explains her entire personalities and why they act the way that they are. Like, Heather's first season was about leaving the Mormon church. Whitney talks about having like a stripper pole in her house because she's an ex-Mormon. Mary's married to her step-grandfather. Bronwyn had a baby out of wedlock at 19 in the Mormon church and had like a scarlet letter on her since she was 19 years old up until still today.
You were trying to make sure I wasn't having sex, and guess what? I had a baby by myself.
You know how miserable I was trying to hide it?
Also, I don't know if this is just me, I find it a little bit more appropriate for someone like Heather Gay to get blackout drunk at 50 because she did not drink for the first like 40 years of her life, as opposed to when the house was in New York City, we're doing it. I'm like, oof, all these girls are alcoholics, this is bad. Like when Heather does it, I'm just like, okay, yeah, because you didn't have like a real 20s. You're living out your 20s and your 50s. Part of the reason why she doesn't want a husband right now, but we'll get to that later. And then another big reason why Salt Lake City is so successful is while the friendships do seem genuine, and it feels like a lot of the cast knew each other pre-filming, friendship dynamics shift greatly from season to season. I feel as though that reflects Mormon culture pretty well, where you're all friendly and buddy-buddy and all part of the community once you're in Mormon culture, but if you leave the church, then you're shunned by everyone immediately. And that's fun as a viewer because no alliance in the show has ever lasted more than 3 consecutive seasons. Heather is also known as a narrator of the show, very similar to how Bethany was known as a Greek chorus at the beginning of Roni. Even her confessionals are Greek chorus-like. Like, here's Heather being an uppity bitch translator for Meredith dragging Lisa.
If you think that this is normal behavior, then there's no more I can do for you. If you think that you should be getting some help, I'm happy to help you.
Once I meet with your therapist and she deems you worthy, then I shall perhaps consider a path to resolution.
Also, obviously, she was a narrator / Greek chorus during Receipts Proof Timeline screenshots, as well as a digital burn book of last season's finale. And it's interesting because both Heather and Bethany have very similar trajectories, both starting out as the relatable ones and subsequently fan favorites. However, Bethany fell out of favor with the audience over the course of a decade, while Heather fell out of favor with the audience over the course of like 3 seasons. Okay, now let's get into her actual arcs in the show. So when we first meet Heather, she's immediately deemed as the relatable one for a myriad of different reasons. She's recently divorced, more plus-sized, and was struggling to raise 3 kids with no real work experience. But then she started her own business that made her very wealthy, which is a very similar story to the OG housewife, Vicki Gunvalson. In season 1, she's also best friends with Jen Shah, and Jen describes her essentially as like the white girl that's down with black culture. Jen doesn't say that, but that's a subtext when she explains that Heather can rap and will sleep with black men. She's like the spicy white girl that's now trendy for white Americans to be in post-June 2020 Black Lives Matter protests in America. So Heather's company is called Beauty Lab and Laser, which is about helping women, more specifically Mormon women, achieving perfection. And by perfection, of course, I mean physical perfection. Beauty Lab and Laser is a med spa, and fun fact, Salt Lake City has equally as many med spas per capita as Beverly Hills, which shocked me. Salt Lake City also has the 2nd highest number of plastic surgeons per capita in America. The only city that's higher than it is Miami. Salt Lake City has more plastic surgeons per capita than LA and New York City, which shook me. I guess it makes sense because like LA and New York have like a much higher population, but still. Heather's opinion on her med spa is it's beauty by the people for the people. They wouldn't tell you not to buy Cocoa Pebbles at Target because there's too much sugar, so why should we be telling adult women what to do with their bodies? That's one take, but also like eating Cocoa Pebbles once, getting Botox at 18. What's gonna have a bigger effect on your life long term? So a big part of the reason Salt Lake City has so many plastic surgeons and med spas is in Mormonism, there is a cultural preference for looking natural but perfected, which very much fits the med spa brand and services. The services med spas offer are Botox, laser hair removal, facials, etc., rather than extreme surgical changes you see in places like Miami, Beverly Hills, or South Korea. Mommy makeovers, aka non-surgical treatments for new moms, like skin tightening and laser resurfacing, are very big in Utah due to its Mormon influence, and women have more children younger in Utah. Utah has one of the highest birth rates in the United States, and Utah is actually the fastest growing state in terms of population. Its population increased by 18% from 2010 to 2020. So it makes sense that business is booming at Beauty Lab and Laser in Salt Lake City. In her very first scene on the show, she's giving her preteen daughters facials. So yeah, over the course of season 1, she's very much viewed as a nice one and the relatable one. She gets into some fights with Jen, and the finale is kind of Heather standing up for herself against Jen because Jen had been a shitty friend to her. But Heather stood up for herself in a way that she didn't seem mean. She definitely still very much seemed like a very nice person. But then we get to the season 1 reunion. It actually opens up with Heather announcing that Rihanna now follows her on Instagram. And then Heather says Rihanna DM'd her over the course of season 1 airing. And she basically was like, that healed all my trauma from the past decade, was Rihanna DMing me. Fun fact, Rihanna also currently follows Mary Cosby, Bronwyn, and Whitney on Instagram as well. And to this day, Heather has the most Instagram followers of any of the Salt Lake City housewives. Yeah, but then after that cute little like Rihanna moment, her Mormon blood definitely bled through and through here. Mormons are stereotypically known for being like superficially nice, but turning on people they don't fall in line. And Heather went from being like the nice, relatable one during the season to being like mean and showing this very big like underbelly of anger like Dorinda when she drinks. One of her storylines in season 1 was Heather like being mad at Lisa because according to Heather, they knew each other in college and Lisa's like, we didn't. And then Lisa provided a receipt from a text in 2017 where Heather texted Lisa, so excited to meet you. So clearly that means like they didn't know each other. But Heather was like going in on this point that they knew each other for like the entire reunion. And there's like dumb housewives arguments that are dumb, but like still good for housewives. This is just like so stupid. Lisa's like, we didn't know each other. Here's a receipt. And Heather's like, no. And like just keeps like fucking yelling for no reason. It's like, Heather, shut up. At least when like Mariah Carey is saying like, I don't know her to J-Lo, that's like funny, you know? Heather's just getting like so angry for like no reason. It's like, Heather, shut up. Also a funny foreshadowing moment in this season 1 reunion is Andy asks Jen what she does for work. And Heather says,
You know, I try to be like a fairly smart person, but like, remember, I was just like, I still don't get it. And I was at a company dinner at Tao, and I was also at the owner's table at One Oak. Best night ever, you know? And I was just like, well, I don't know what she does, but I like it.
And then the last thing I'll say about the season 1 reunion is Andy asks Lisa whose ego has inflated the most since the airing of the show, and Lisa says Heather, which makes sense, but I also will choose to interpret this as Heather finally finding her voice after being silenced by Mormonism her entire life. Now that brings us into season 2. So season 2 starts with Heather's daughter choosing between the 2 biggest party schools in the nation, UCSB or San Diego State, and she goes to the number 1 party school, UCSB. I don't know if y'all been to Deltopia, but I've heard stories and it's fucking insane. And it's funny because like the entire season, Heather is essentially encouraging her daughters to have premarital sex, which makes sense because it's the opposite of the experience that she had in college and in her youth. And she said she views Georgia as who she could have been in an alternate universe without Mormonism. And of course, I know premarital sex is fine as long as it's safe and consensual. I mean, it's just very funny, the image of a mom being like, you better be fucking a lot in college. I didn't raise no fucking prude, bitch. I mean, everyone should have a hoe era. It builds character. And then it's funny because literally in a season 4 episode, she's elated when she sees Georgia in a string bikini in Cabo, because it's the exact opposite of what Heather was doing at BYU in the 90s. So, of course, as we all know, the biggest moment of season 2 is Jen Shaw getting arrested by the FBI. It's still just insane that happened. Jesus Christ. Jen gets arrested while they're parked in a Sprinter van about to head off to Vail, Colorado. They go to Vail, Colorado, have the group chip, and then when they get back, Jen reaches out to a few of the housewives. Heather is the first one to accept her call and sits down with Jen for a meal, where Jen is able to talk about what happened. And then this begins Heather's extremely toxic phase of her blind loyalty to Jen for the next season and a half. And it's just funny because Heather tries to sell the blind loyalty to Jen as the exact opposite what Mormons do. She says when people are going through tough times, that's when Mormons close the door, as opposed to she's opening the door and supporting her. But she's doing exactly what Mormon women do, which is blind loyalty. At the reunion, when Andy asked Heather, why are you still supporting Jen? Heather said she believed in loyalty and compassion, which like... Very interesting that Heather is showing compassion to Jen, a woman who showed no compassion to vulnerable people and elderly people that she completely took advantage of to help fund her extravagant lifestyle. But yeah, Heather said she believed in loyalty and compassion, especially when someone is at their lowest point. Other housewives like Meredith suggested that Heather's loyalty was naive, but Heather stood firm. But then also Meredith is a clown because literally all of season 2, she's like, I don't fuck with Jen. Anyone who is friends with Jen is not friends with me. She fuck with my family. Like, I don't fuck with Jen. And then all of season 3, Jen and Meredith are best friends. At the season 3 reunion, when Andy asks Meredith about like Jen's guilty plea, Meredith literally has like no reaction. She's like, yeah, I just like, yeah. Like, what? So as we move into season 3, Heather's still blindly loyal to Jen, but Heather's initial storyline in season 3 is Heather and Whitney's friendship falling apart. Heather and Whitney had been like kind of trying to take down Lisa since day 1, so Whitney at the beginning of season 3 starts a rumor that Lisa gives blowies for jazz tickets. I can't even say that with a straight face. And then Whitney says, oh yeah, we heard the rumor with Angie Harrington when we were at a jazz game. And Heather's like, I never heard that being said, so if that was said when I was there, I don't remember hearing that. And then their friendship blows up basically because Heather's like,
You for calling me a
I know it's reality TV and they're drunk, but again, the fight is like Whitney heard something and Heather didn't. That's like the dumbest fight ever. But then it's also funny because like in Heather's confessional, she's like, blowies for jazz tickets? Like, that's crazy. Like, for Laker tickets, maybe. Which, like, same. Like, I'd suck Jack Nicholson's dick for some courtside Laker tickets. And if you're saying you wouldn't, you're lying. So yeah, besides her falling out with Whitney, her main storyline this season is being ride or die for Jen. Where she really loses a lot of favor with the audience is when she gets a black eye. So yeah, Heather gets a black eye when they're on a trip in San Diego at the end of season 3. And it's, like, pretty obvious that Jen gave her the black eye. And Heather is lying and switching stories. When she shows all the other women, they're all, like, genuinely concerned and worried.
I think we all know what happened. I just think we don't want to talk about it. What happened?
We don't know. Did you get some short-term memory loss with that black eye? You just said two different things.
And then it's very obvious with how quiet Jen is that entire day that it's Jen that did it. But Heather isn't officially saying that Jen's the one that did it, and Heather is like making jokes about it, which is extremely uncomfortable for everyone involved. Really good to make a joke out of like domestic abuse and physical violence. The next episode, it opens up with Heather low-key bullying Jen for giving her a black eye, but then towards the end of the episode, like Jen's in a fight with someone, and Heather's like,
all you have to say to shut all of them up is like, why don't we talk about how Heather really got the black eye?
Let's do that.
And we're not going to tell them. You know why? Because they don't deserve to know. They already do, and they just want us to say it out loud. I'm loyal to the core. Snitches get what? Stitches.
And then at the reunion, she's literally just like lying through her teeth with crocodile tears about blacking out. And it like impacted production because like HR and stuff, they had to do like a thorough investigation to make sure that no member of production is like physically violent, giving cast members or any human being a black eye, obviously. So people could have lost their jobs. And she's like even lying about that. She says, I didn't want an investigation. Then she says, I wanted an investigation. She tries to lie and throw in her Mormon guilt as a reason for why she's crying. And it's just like so bad. And then Angie K at the reunion calls everything out accurately.
Jen was very off and not present the next day. She was very quiet to herself. She was on her phone a lot. And then when production asked Heather at the Greek dinner, what happened to your eye? Jen looked at her quietly and said, what are you going to say happened? And that just gave me a very kind of dark feeling that there was something that they knew that they were not sharing with the rest of the group.
And then Jen isn't at the season 3 reunion because she's waiting to be sentenced, but Heather admits to Whitney and the cast that she holds Jen to a much lower standard than she holds Whitney, but also says she's going to continue to stick by Jen because it's so far in, so why would I back out now? And it's like, Heather, you should back out now because there are thousands of victims of Jen Shaw whose lives she ruined, but you're just going to stay ride or die because it's too late now. Like, what? So that brings us to season 4. And in season 4, a big pattern in Heather's life is revealed that I don't think she's fully aware of to this day.
If Heather Gay is not worshiping the Mormon church, she's worshiping Jen. And if she's not worshiping Jen, she's worshiping Lisa. Heather, stop it!
So it's interesting how in her book she details her blind loyalty to her husband is a big part of the reason that she would have never gotten divorced, even though she was so miserable. Then post her divorce, when the show starts, her blind loyalty switches from Frank to Jen, even though Jen was a toxic friend literally since season 1. That's literally what the last few episodes of season 1 are about. But that blind loyalty continues all the way up until the day she was sentenced. And then even though at the beginning of season 4 she says a weight has been lifted, recently at the Las Putadistas Awards, when asked,
are you open to Jen Shaw returning to the cast?
I don't talk to Jen, and I don't make those decisions.
So yeah, I feel like even in prison, Jen still has like a hold over Heather. Anyways, back to season 4. So in episode 1, she says a weight has finally been lifted, but Heather can't function without being blindly loyal to someone, so the blind loyalty just switches over from Jen Shaw to Lisa Barlow, the woman who she was antagonizing for the first 2 seasons. And her former high school classmate, Angie Katsanevis, rightfully calls out that Heather always wants to sit at the cool kids table and will do whatever she can to get there. And the cool kids table of Salt Lake City is Lisa and Meredith. The blind loyalty is a product of her Mormonism, of course, which I explained earlier, but the want to be at the cool kids table is definitely a vestige of her fat girl with a big personality, childhood and young adulthood. I will say she does not start out blindly loyal from the get-go, and actually she and Lisa are beefing for the first half of season 4 because Lisa didn't invite Heather to her son Jack's mission reveal party because Lisa felt that Heather would not be supportive of Jack's mission. And Heather's like, no, I'm so happy for him. What are you talking about? She's basically just like, I just want him to know what he's signing up for. Which makes sense because like her mission didn't go the best. Lisa's definitely like a Mormon 2.0 with her gambling and owning of a fucking tequila business. She clearly is not a strict Mormon following the gospel to a T, so it'll be interesting for her son, who also is not a strict Mormon, spreading the gospel of a religion that he doesn't even follow that strictly for 2 years. But in episode 10, they make up with Lisa saying East Coast Mormonism is much more lax, and Heather saying, yes, in Utah all the rules are heightened. They're friendly for the rest of the season, and even at the reunion, they're sitting next to each other. So yeah, besides that, Heather doesn't really have much of a storyline in season 4 up until the finale, and as we all know, the season 4 finale of Salt Lake City Housewives is arguably the most iconic finale of any franchise.
Receipts, proof, timeline, screenshots, everything.
This is what makes Salt Lake City so good, is that even in 2024, they're able to make an amazing reality show where storylines are rarely leaked. Like, I didn't see anything about Monica being a mole pre the episode airing, and even if there were some stuff, it was not like in the internet zeitgeist at all. So kudos to SLC for still being able to do that. I'm not going to talk about whether or not Heather knew the entire season, because I honestly don't really care about that. Obviously, reality TV is fake. I care more about the fact that she made a spectacular grand finale as opposed to her waiting for the right time to reveal this information. Reality TV does not need to be 100% reality in order for me to enjoy enjoy it. And if it were 100% reality, it would not be enjoyable for sure. Like, for example, I'm sure Bethany in season 8 of Roni was off camera snickering and elated that she had found this gossip on Luann that Tom was cheating on her, because she knew she was going to make a great finale and keep her check for the next few seasons. But also, she cared about Luann at least a little bit, so she did feel bad that she was hurting her friend. So she just played up those emotions for the camera and gave us a great finale. Like, what? Also, little known fact, Carol said on Heather's podcast that it was Trump's disgraced former attorney Michael Cohen who sent the photo to Bethany. Carol claimed that Michael Cohen told her at a party. Bethany went on TikTok and denied it and said that it was a woman that texted her, but then that doesn't add up because in the season 8 finale, she said it was a guy that texted her. And then also Bethany deleted the TikTok like a day later, so Bethany was clearly lying. So if Carol's telling the truth and Michael Cohen is the one that sent it to Bethany, that is like one of the most hilarious and iconic things that's ever happened on the face of the planet. But anyways, back to Heather. She created one of the most iconic finales ever, bringing all the OGs on a beach, creating multiple like Renaissance paintings. Before all of them exposing Monica at the Bermuda Triangle. Like, even the wind understood the assignment. And then at the end of them attacking Monica, Heather reveals that it's Jen the one that gave her a black eye.
I don't think you understand something about this group. We have been through this bullshit before with Jen. She gave me a black eye.
Which is an insane moment because while everyone low-key knew it was Jen, no one ever thought that Heather would actually admit it. Jen denied it from prison and posted on her Instagram story. Side note, do prisoners have smartphones? I like literally did not know that prisoners could post on social media. Unless it was like someone on her team outside of prison that posted it. But yeah, Jen posted denying it, but like Jen is a known liar, so I don't believe anything that comes out of her mouth. And surprisingly, even with an amazing season, the reality Von Tease part of the reunion was really, really boring. But it was interesting to see Andy grill Heather on the black eye. And Heather still being a horrible person and like laughing and making a joke out of, accusing the producers of covering up the crime while she was on her book tour. Saying, oh, maybe it was a sex act, ha ha ha. And then again, Heather uses crocodile tears to paint herself as just like fully afraid of Jen and her Mormon guilt, and that's why she didn't confess. Heather says, Jen Shaw was never my friend and I will never fall for a pretend friend again. But then it's also like Lisa's a pretend friend but pop off. However, I will say all the OGs do forgive her and understand why she didn't come forward. And I think I'm inclined to feel a little more sympathy as people in a similar situation as her empathize with her and understand why she did it. But also housewives aren't known for having the best moral compass, so my official opinion is it's wrong to lie about physical violence. And now that brings us up to season 5. So I remember actually telling my sister after season 4, I was like, pretty iconic of Heather to become the main character and the fan favorite again after like her horrific season 3 showing. And then when the season started, she had sent her Snowflake and I was like, wow, okay, yeah, great. Heather's going to be the main character again, the fan favorite. She's going to like kill it season 5. And then she like immediately flopped. She didn't really have much of a storyline to season 5 besides like being blindly loyal to Lisa and Meredith and like going after Bronwyn's marriage and calling Bronwyn a gold digger, even though Heather in her book admitted to being a gold digger. Also, Heather's never had a successful marriage or even relationship for that matter, so why are you getting involved in someone else's? However, Heather did bring Brittany on to season 5, which gave us a glimpse into Mormon women that are actively still in the church, and it gave us a glimpse into the type of people that Heather grew up with. Like, it took everything for Brittany to admit that she was having a physical relationship with Jared Osmond, and I was like, damn, that Mormon trauma runs deep. Like, Brittany drinks on camera and that's fine, but admitting that you have a physical relationship with someone you're not married to, whew. In episode 1, she opens up about how she lost 30 pounds via Ozempic. She also has veneers. So, not going to comment on a woman's body, but yeah, you could definitely tell that she's lost a lot of weight and looks very different than she did in season 4. And I think that it's great that she was open about her Ozempic use, even though using Ozempic to lose weight isn't the best thing because you could be taking that drug from people who have diabetes who actually need it. She also, in an interview right before the season, said that
body positivity was all a big lie. It's better to not be overweight.
Which I'll give my thoughts as a gay man. Mormon culture is superficial, men are superficial, and like American culture in general is superficial. You are treated better in the workplace and in personal lives if you are deemed to be attractive or have a more desirable body. I'll say for myself personally, once I gained more muscle, I definitely got a lot more attention from men than when I was like a scrawny little twink. Yes, twinks are in for gay men too, but only if you're like white, Asian, or Latino. Black twinks aren't really a thing. At least with gay men, body positivity is not a movement at all because everyone knows that for gay men it would be a lie. If you are more attractive, you are treated better on every fucking facet of life. And for women, I kind of feel like it's the same thing. I don't think Heather's like a villain for exposing what everyone already knew.
I started to feel seen for the first time. I was being valued by my castmates, by the public, in a way that I had never been valued before.
Her experience is changing the way she raises her daughters.
I don't want to lie to them and say it doesn't matter. What matters is on the inside, but it does matter. That has been my experience.
I understand it is sad and disheartening for some fans and viewers to see someone who is so into body positivity kind of turning into what they view as the antithesis of what she was the first few seasons. But like what I said earlier, Heather owns a med spa, so I feel like she was never really fully in the body positivity movement because owning a med spa is the exact opposite of what people are trying to push with body positivity. In episode 2, when asked about dating, she says, my life is going great for the first time in my entire life, so why would I ruffle it up with trying to find a man? Which makes sense. Again, someone like Heather getting blackout drunk on camera and doing stuff is much more acceptable to me than like Luann or Sonia doing it, because Heather really only has been drinking for the past like 10 to 15 years, and you can tell she's still very new at it. She fucking orders like a Tito's with like ice water, and it's like, boo-boo, order a Tito soda. Like, what? She still clearly doesn't know what she's doing, and she's trying to live out the youth that she didn't have in her late teens and 20s, which is why she's really pushing Georgia to have premarital sex at UCSB. Besides that, throughout the rest of the season, the fans start viewing Heather more as a mean girl, and I think there is something to do with the fact that now that she's skinnier and has fake teeth and is like blonder and is like one of like the skinny kind of like blonde bitches basically, people may start to twist her standing up for herself as her being a mean girl. I'm not saying that is true or not true. I could see that being a part of the reason she started to be viewed like that. And even in the reunion, Andy asked, why are you a mean girl? And Heather's response is, that's an interesting read. Like when I was heavier, I was more of an underdog. I had to fight a lot harder battles and I used to be a lot meaner. I mean, some people when they have a glow up, they become like a bitchier person. I'm not saying she was or she wasn't. I'm just saying I could see that happening. And not just a glow up now that she feels like she's officially at the cool kids table, because at the reunion, she's sitting next to Lisa and Meredith. She's like, ooh, now that I'm a cool kid, I can like be a cunt. And at the end of season 5, she tried to be a narrator again, where they did this whole like digital burn book thing.
We are obsessed with trying to expose each other.
Where they each read out like the meanest thing that they had said about one or the other, but only like half of them did it. And that finale was like, this is so fucking Mormon, Jesus Christ. Like, I would love to see like Nene or Bethany's response to one of the housewives suggesting, let's read out the meanest thing we've ever said to someone. Anyways, to wrap up Heather's life and career as a whole, I think Lisa was right in season 1 to say that she's changed the most, and definitely has changed a lot from season 1 to season 5. But I like to view that as her finding her voice for her first time in her life. I feel as though she's scrutinized more than the other 4 OGs, because she used to be plus size, and plus size people are scrutinized more. And her saying it's better to be skinny was born out of her own experience gaining more respect when she became skinny. And I do generally think it's great that she finally found her voice. I initially remember being judgmental of her when she was like, I found my passion finally. And I was kind of like, girl, your passion is starting drama with your friends for fame and attention. But upon researching her, I understand it's deeper than that. She was a good Mormon girl for her entire life, and that religion/culture didn't work for her. She's now living a second chapter where finally, for the first time in her life, she's living for herself. It's kind of honestly similar to like when gay people come out. We were restricted by societal norms for so long that we have somewhat of a second puberty, finding ourselves in who we really are when you're away from societal expectations and living on your own. I know at least it happened to me when I moved out of my parents' house at 24. I feel like I didn't even fully come into myself until I moved to Brooklyn and tried to survive in this economy. I'm sorry. And now that's happening for Heather at 50. Heather, while flawed and definitely not the best person, like it's wrong to lie about being physically assaulted, is a perfect example of you can start a new chapter at any time. And I think that part of her story is beautiful. That was my deep dive on the life and career of Heather Gay. Everyone please comment your thoughts below. I'm so curious to hear what other people have to say about her. If there's anything I missed, follow me on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Strava. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna go try to survive in this economy.